Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call It All Happens for the Best. What do I mean by that? Well, this human experience, which is dual in nature, it's always a dance between the pole of opposites, pain and pleasure. What we are, however, in essence, is the background in which the movement seems to take place. Now, the reason why I was inspired to talk about this is because I was watching a story about a particular individual who did some things that eventually the consequences were very, very dark, put it this way. And you may say, how could it possibly be that everything happens for the best? Look what this individual did, and now look what is happening to him. Or people who have going through major or massive challenges or horrifying stories and everything. How could you say that all happens for the best? Because I'm not speaking in terms of the human experience. I'm speaking in terms of who we truly are. In other words, there is I guess it's an analogy that says that a child who is sleeping in a very comfortable bed, it's more likely to live through very heavy nightmares. Because even the nightmare is challenging because the child is so comfortable in that bed. Well, he suffers all those nightmares, but somehow he doesn't wake up. Now, if you have someone who's sleeping in a very uncomfortable bed or on the floor or something like that, even the slightest noise can wake him or wake her up, right? So they have to sleep very comfortably in order to deal with all this mental agitation. Well, in the human experience, if we were very comfortable and everything goes our way, what would be the motivation for us to want to wake up from this dream? Because in the end, what is meant by everything works for the best is just hoping that at some point we realize that the human experience is a very painful experience, you know? Human experience is always it's a dance between pain and pleasure, and it's mostly painful, you know. And that's why we are always trying to do the best to cope with it. So we seek pleasure, we try to chase things, we try to constantly do something to try to run away from the pain of feeling separate and try to hang on to some kind of pleasure to make sense to this experience, you see. In some cases, the pain is so unbearable that eventually we want a way out. And the way out is not through the mind. The way out is transcending the mind by inward. Now, let me be careful here because there's no outward or inward. It's just like this limitation of language, and I'm doing the best I can within its limits. So, inward means do not identify with the thoughts. Don't believe you're thinking. That is what is meant by going inward. You see? Because the purpose of the thinking is to keep the attention outward. You see? And then we're trying to use the very same thinking that puts us in this, in this situation to try to get us out. I think Albert Einstein used to say you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You see? So, technically speaking, whatever we do with the mind is just keep running in circles. It's the dog chasing its tail. So we need to be out of the mind. That's why there's an old quote that says, if you want to know truth, you must be out of your mind. Of course, out of your mind, there's two meanings to that. One is you gotta be crazy, right? But in reality, we have to be a little bit crazy in order for us to be able to break through the spell, the hypnosis of the human experience. That's why the third book of the series, you're not crazy, you're healing. See, healing implies that I am beginning to remove the veil you see, which created by thought. If you don't believe you're thinking right now, you are resting in peace. You see, the peace that passes all understanding, the happiness we're pointing to. So if we are finding ourselves dealing with a challenging situation, and by the way, remember this, if you feel guilty because you did something you shouldn't have done, always remember, everything is designed to wake up from the dream. Therefore, even that situation or scenario it's nothing you did. You're not guilty of that. You haven't done anything because you're not the doer. And remember, if you have any questions about it, go to the second video of this series. The link is on the description, that I think it's called Do We Have Free Will? So you can realize that in the end, we are not even making these decisions. I mean, these are being made through us, apparently, you see, because this is a world of appearances. It appears as if I am here, as if I'm this body, as if I'm this human being, as if I make decisions. But in reality, who we are is that in which all of this seem to manifest. That'll be the fourth book of the series, you know. Everything appears, you know, I am in which everything seems to appear and disappear. So what we're doing here is really nothing special, nothing impossible. What we're doing here is pointing to the fact that the only thing that keeps us distracted from the fact that we are is our thoughts. And we are going beyond that by seeing that if you look at thinking, if you look at it but without identified with it, you experience the peace that everybody's searching for. The problem is that people are searching peace and happiness through pleasure, you see, through the mind, through distraction. But when you just don't identify with the content of the mind, you have found what you've been searching for, which is the peace that passes all understanding, the real happiness, the lasting happiness. Because the background, you see, never changes. It doesn't matter what happens in the world of form, in the appearances. The movement could happen, but the background never changes. And again, that's why sometimes the movement becomes so unbearable that it forces us to finally surrender and rest in the background. That's why everything happens for the best, because everything is happening so that hopefully at some point you realize, oh my God, I can't deal with this anymore. I surrender, and in that surrender you get a taste of what you are, which you have always been and you will always be. You see, in essence. You see now? So it doesn't matter what your situation is, what you may be going through, or what you have gone through, or whatever the case may be. Notice that the only problem is that you're identifying yourself with thinking, with the mind, you see. And if you don't believe the content of the mind, you rest in peace. And from that point on, just notice how life unfolds through you. Always paradoxical, because life will happen according to what's supposed to happen. And people, again, the question that I always address in every book, because it's always the same. Yeah, but I mean, if I'm destined to become a sufferer or to become a villain, that means that I cannot do anything about it. And I always said, yes, technically speaking, there's nothing you can do about it. And yet, here's life inspiring you to listen to this information, to remember who or what you are. Therefore, why even think about the possibility of you being a villain or a sufferer when now life is using you to become free of the spell? So celebrate the fact that now something within you is beginning to wake up from this dream of duality, and celebrate that. And now anything that you think you may have done in the past, remember that it's just a memory, it's a thought, it's not true. And any things of any possible futures or whatever the case may be, it's still, again, any hypotheticals, these are thoughts, you see. But at any point you simply are. That's what we are resting in. This is the invitation through these videos. That's it. These videos are going to tell you the same information over and over again. It's not going to change. Okay? Simply I am, resting in the I am. You see, I am that I am. But let's not get caught up into words, you know, am, experience, direct experience. Let's put it to the test to see that this is not esoteric. This is not nothing mystic. It's just it's the most obvious thing right now. I'm asking you to simply rest in this moment. This is not a meditation, okay? This is just basically pointing to the obvious. Right now, don't identify with any thoughts. Just don't identify with it. Just be, okay? Now I'm going to ask you the following question. And the question is, now without the identification with thoughts, what is left? You see? And remember, like I've always said, if you answer that question, you're going back to thought. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just simply pointing to the obvious of what is. Right now. If you don't identify with the thoughts that is trying to evaluate, that is trying to interpret, that is trying to project meaning onto anything, if you don't identify with the thought, what is left? You see? This is always will always be. That's what we're pointing to here. This is what is left. Now, I know this may seem simple when there may not be feelings, you know, when there's feelings and emotions, that makes it a little more challenging. But if you look at those emotions, if you allow them to be, okay, and do not use thinking to interpret them, then you live through them, because everything being a movement, everything comes and everything goes. Everything is transitory, but what you are is permanent. And what you are is the peace, the happiness, you see, the love that we are so much seeking through mind concepts. When I get this, I'll be happy. When I find that, I'll be at peace. When I get this situation, or whatever the case may be, solved, when this thing happened, then I'll be, you see. But in reality, it's all an illusion. It's a game that we're playing, that it's keeping us distracted from the fact that we are already home. You see, we seem to be dreaming that we're somewhere else. A great movie that I suggest you want to watch is The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is the same story. Look at it, how the girl just falls asleep, but we don't realize that. I mean, they tell you at the very beginning, but eventually you get so caught up into the drama of the movie that you forget about it. And at the end, the good witch says the most powerful words. I mean, that movie was ahead of its time. What it was saying, you know, turn inward. You see, he wasn't telling that don't get on that hot air balloon. It's not going to take you anywhere. It's going to keep you within the dream. Just go inward. See, withdraw the attention from everything. And of course, there's a sensation because she has her friends, the people she met, and everything. But go inward. There's no place like home. This is what we're doing here. Just be. Instead of trying to use the mind to go inward necessarily, you know, we're saying just be, and that's home. You see, there's no place like home. There's no place like peace. There's no place like love. There's no place like joy. And that's what you are. That's what we're reminded of. So just be right now. Let the feelings be if they have to be. Let the thoughts be if they have to be. Just don't believe in them, and don't use them to try to translate the feelings. And you're home. You're resting in peace. You are happy. And now you see why everything happens for the best. Well, this is the inspiration that came through this instrument. Hope it helps. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.